Thank you for joining us on this episode of True Crime Producer. Is Young Thug a victim of the justice system, or is he actually the criminal mastermind that he's accused of being? Hi, I'm Chantal. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime Producer. Today we're tackling the question of Young Thug. Is Young Thug a victim of the justice system, or is he actually a criminal mastermind as he's being accused of being? It's a huge case for multiple reasons. It goes as wide as racketeering, and they're talking about Trump and the effect that it's going to have on him and his many indictments. We're not going to go into all of that today because this is such a broad scope of material, but we're going to talk through the case, what we know so far, the cold facts about it, and then open this up for discussion a little bit. So, who is Young Thug? He's an incredibly popular artist. He's arguably one of the more influential rappers that have come out of Atlanta. He frequently collaborates with people like Kanye West and Drake and other incredibly influential rappers. He won a Grammy for This Is America, which is a personal favorite of mine. And he's also been in jail for 567 days now, which is probably one of the biggest reasons you haven't heard much from him lately. He's being accused of being the mastermind behind some of the largest violence seen in Atlanta recently. Another key fact to talk about before getting into the case is YSL. So YSL was formed by Young Thug in 2012, and it stands for Young Stoner Life. It's a very successful record company, also happens to be a subset of Warner Music Group. YSL is also the name of a subset of the Bloods gang in Atlanta. Prosecutors are saying that those two YSLs are actually the same thing. So while Young Thug claims that his YSL, aka his record group, stands for Young Stoner Life, prosecutors are saying it's the YSL in Atlanta that stands for Young Slime Life. The issue with YSL is that it has been linked recently to some of the most violent acts apparently seen in Atlanta in the last several years. And this all started with the murder of Donovan Thomas Jr., also known as Nut or Big Nut, who was assassinated in a drive-by shooting in 2015. He was a high-ranking member of another blood subset known as the Inglewood family, or IF. This created essentially a war between the two subsets of these gangs, between YSL and IF. Prosecutors are not saying that Jeffrey Williams murdered Mr. Thomas himself, but rather arranged for his murder. And he did this in a couple of ways. He rented the car that was used in the drive-by, and then he paid off those who committed the crime. The vehicle that was used in the drive-by was indeed rented under Mr. Williams' name, but his lawyers claim that he rented vehicles for friends all the time, that this was nothing new, and that he didn't realize that there was any beef between Mr. Thomas and Little Woody, that essentially this has just been a really unfortunate situation that he's been dragged into. Essentially, what the prosecutors are arguing is that Young Thug oversaw and ordered murders, armed robbery, witness intimidation, drug dealing, etc. They're saying that he was able to be this kind of mastermind due to his fame and celebrity, and because of those things was able to rule this subset with an iron fist. They're painting him to be basically this mafiosa leader, and that all crimes went through him. Initially, there was a 56-count indictment, but only 2 were against Young Thug. However, after a search of his house, 9 more were added on, including possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony and possession of an illegal machine gun. Mr. Williams is saying that many other people lived in his house during this time and that the contraband was not his and was never his. What's really wild here is if convicted on all charges, Young Thug could face up to 120 years in prison. Another interesting thing that's happening in this case is several lyrics written by Young Thug are being used as evidence against him. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that's fair? Have you ever written a piece of music or a piece of literature that's fictitious that other people might use to paint you in a bad light? Should it ever be used in a court of law? We often, listen to music that we can acknowledge is not real, maybe never happened, but we like the way it makes us feel, or we like the way it sounds. Doesn't necessarily mean that we agree with what's being said. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of artists when they're writing. They're expressing themselves, or they're expressing a part of themselves, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily agree with what they're saying or that they would ever do something like that. And I think that's an important part of art, is being able to explore these different sides of us. Do you think it's fair then for that art to be used in a court of law potentially against you, used to possibly indict you on some serious felony charges? Yeah, just because he has an edgy persona and writes about potentially controversial things, does that mean he's guilty? Several Instagram posts are also being used as evidence against him and as evidence in this case. It's interesting to me because we often talk about how fake social media is. We say that all the time, whether we're talking about filters or the way people look versus, online versus in real life. We use it to remind young girls all the time that what they're seeing online is not real. And yet we're using social media as evidence. Now, I think there's clear distinctions when it can be upheld in a court of law. And that goes into, when something was posted, what exactly the caption was, what exactly the picture is. But there's also some ambiguity there. There's some gray space. What do you guys think? Is there a clear line? Should we say no social media posts can be allowed in a court of law, or should we leave it up for interpretation as they come along? It's just an interesting idea. There are some more comical elements of this trial. One of my favorite ones that I've seen is referencing the lyric "Pushing P," which Young Thug's lawyers are claiming now to actually mean pushing positivity.
A song that is wildly popular. It's around the globe. It's called Pushing P. And it's positivity. It means any circumstance you're in, if you think positively about something, you can make it through.
I don't know about you guys, but when I heard that song and I heard that lyric, that's definitely not what came to mind.
She not a lesbian for peace, she turned lesbian. Push P, I'm pushing P.
But I suppose there's a world where it absolutely could mean that. But part of me also feels like it's a stretch. What do you guys think? Do you think there's a world where it could be accurate? They could be telling the truth? Let us know in the comments below. So next video, we're going to take a look at RICO and just what that means, why we're hearing the word RICO thrown about so much. We're going to take a look at racketeering. We're going to take a look at Trump and what this case means for even bigger cases that are set up in the future. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys next time.